So from this point, where we've kind of given you a picture of why it's important and what it is that we're looking at, we want to turn it over to our panel. And for the discussion here, we're very pleased to have the panel members that we have. I think there'll be great different perspectives to some of these questions, but also some insights into both what the public sector is concerned about, but also from a private sector. What are they looking at and what are some of their concerns and potential recommendations on how to make everything more peacefully coexist and share this infrastructure system that we have in the region. So we have Mary Evans, and she's representing the Gulf Coast Rail District. She's a board member there, a new board member. She's been on the board for a couple of months now, so she's still getting her feet wet a little bit in that. So we also have Peter Keith, and he is a Harris County Toll Road Authority representing them. Stephen Schellenberg from IMS Worldwide, and then Jerry James from Lodestar Logistics. And then for the session, again, Joe Bryan from Halpro will be facilitating, and he'll give the panelists an opportunity to provide a little more introduction about who they are and what it is they do.
Thank you, Paula. How are you? Good. I think our voices should project pretty well. I understand the acoustics here are pretty good. We do have a mic if you find as we're talking you can't hear things, but I think so far I think we're okay. I want to give you 2 points of orientation, and then the panel will introduce themselves. First is, I had a conversation a little while ago with a fellow who'd grown up, he'd been doing a wide variety of trucking throughout most of his life. He's a native. His view was that the center of gravity for economic activity and for freight activity in Houston had moved through the years steadily west, from downtown to west of downtown and further out. What made it move is growth. And growth is here. This town that we're in, Jersey Village, is one of the epicenters of growth for Greater Houston, which means that you here have experienced the explosion of traffic. You're right on the 290 corridor, which is, as you drive it, you can sort of see the history of growth here. As you get out towards Austin, it's not a very big road. If you come steadily into Houston, it's a bigger and bigger road. It's because of that influence. So you can see you're on one of the major corridors is under great pressure. You're in one of the areas where a lot of traffic has grown up. Trucks come with it. The trucks are here too, and they're growing along with it. And other forms of freight are growing along with it because it's supplying businesses and it's supplying shops where you pick up the things you need in your house. Second thought, this set of folks here who are survey panelists, most of them live in the community. They're your neighbors. And what we're doing here in part is a neighbor discussion of people who are responsible for either to oversee as an agency or to help deliver the goods that you need. And they too have houses in the region. They drive their cars, they commute, they put up with all the things that you put up with, as well as trying to get things supplied. So so view what we're going to be doing here as discussing what it is that we need in this community and in the greater region. With that, I'm going to ask the panelists to introduce themselves and say a little bit about what they do. And you're also welcome to introduce any particular perspective you'd like people to hear. And then each of them has, we've asked them all to respond to 4 questions. And most of them have had, one fellow has, most of them had a chance to think about this a little bit. One of them is helping us out with that. And we'll take you through that. So Mary, if you would like to start.
Okay, and I'm going to stand. I have a little bit of sore throat, so if you can't hear me, just say something, throw something at me, and I'll try to speak a little bit louder. But as you mentioned, my name is Mary Evans, and I'm a new board member with the Gulf Coast Rail District. And I'll just start off a little bit to tell you that the Gulf Coast Rail District was granted authority by the state of Texas. We did have this. Could you hear me? Or do they want to speak in the microphone?
You can save your voice by it.
Yeah, so you may need to turn it on or turn it on. All right, so it's not on yet. It is.
Okay, is that better? Okay. So I guess you all heard, my name is Mary Evans. I'm a new board member with the Gulf Coast Rail District. We were granted authority in 2007 by the state of Texas, so again, we're a very new agency, and the mission for the rail district is, you'll have to excuse me, but I'll have to read our mission, but it's to work with public and private partners to develop and implement a systematic approach to the improvement of the regional rail network for the benefit of the region's residents and economy. I'm also wearing a second hat tonight. I'm the president of the Cyber Houston Chamber of Commerce. So with that, we're very instrumental in the expansion of 290, what's going on. The two, I would say, biggest projects that I work on, 90% of the time I spend working on transportation issues, 290, Grand Parkway, etc. The second issue is the school district education issues. So, like she said, I'm not a member of the community per se. I'm a professional member of the community, but I'm on the roads traveling all day long. I'm up and down 290. I'm back over at H-GAC. I'm traveling to Austin. So traffic and freight is something I'm very concerned about. I think our main goal is that we want to provide a safe environment for everybody traveling the freeways these days. So with Houston being a major hub, we have a very vested interest that we work together as a partner and partnership to get these things fixed to where we're not all sitting in traffic all day long. I mean, I know that I'm getting calls and we want to do everything we can to kind of mitigate that. So I guess I'll turn it over to...
Yes, go ahead.
I'll probably pass on the microphone. My name is Peter Key. I'm a native Houstonian. I, like everybody in here, I drive a car, so I have opinions about transportation. I'm fortunate enough to be the director of the Harris County Toll Road Authority. We live here, you pretty much know that we do have tollways here in the Houston region. West Park Tollway, Katy Tollway, Hardy Tollway, Fort Bend Tollway, and then the San Houston Tollway, the big circle, just outside of where we are right now. And as Mary said, she drives the roads. Well, probably everybody here drives the roads. We all have challenges to meet on transportation. Grateful to be here tonight to listen.
Thank you. My name is Jerry James. I'm with Lodestar Logistics Corporation, and our company primarily provides consulting services to the essentially the petrochemical, petroleum industries. I've been in that industry for 30 years, and maybe a perspective I'll bring tonight as we get a little further along is a large degree of goods that move via the bulk transportation mode. So that's a little bit of a response to questions. I also live in the area. I live off of 249. My office is in the gallery area, so I bike 290 twice a day at least, and spend a lot of time out in the ship channel area also, so I can relate to everything my fellow panelists have said. I'll also add one thing along to Mary's comments is that our company did do some work for the Gulf Coast Rail District early on in its existence on looking at rail congestion and the cost of rail congestion in the area. And I think a very salient fact there is that rail congestion actually eventually manifests itself in road congestion. When the rail system is congested, grade crossings get blocked, and when grade crossings get blocked, traffic slows down, traffic is congested. So it's all very much an integrated network here in the region, and we have to kind of look at all of these aspects individually, but also collectively.
My name is Steve Schellenberg. I'm a resident of Houston since 2004. I live a few blocks up the street in Westwood subdivision. I also lived here from 1978 to 1982, so I'm familiar with a lot of the Houston background. During the good days of the oil field, I worked for a significant oil rig manufacturer at the time, 129. I'm currently employed at IMS Worldwide. We are a logistics consulting firm. We work with global trade, industrial developers, inland ports across the country. And we provide consulting services about the relationship between the flow of goods as it relates to consuming goods coming to us from offshore manufacturers, politics aside, that's the reality of where we are, and the opportunity to develop industrial property, i.e. warehousing and distribution. Our specific sector has been in the intermodal area. The intermodal area is the box that's loaded in China or in Shanghai or in Vietnam or in India and transits all the way across the pond. It's unloaded in Houston or in LA or in Charleston or in New York, and it finds its way to Houston, and then it moves from there by rail or truck to a distribution center. And that's been our core business over the course of the last 7 or 8 years. You have to realize that every 20,000 of those boxes that come to us from offshore drives a demand per million square feet of warehouse space somewhere in the marketplace. That equates to 350 jobs inside that fence line, if you will, inside that building, and another 300 or 400 jobs outside the fence line of that particular building. So the industrial impact of a port of Houston, or the port of LA as it affects Houston, because it certainly does, or the port of New York, New Jersey, or any of the eastern coastal ports, has a huge effect on how we grow our industrial business in Houston. We work in space where we try to find solutions that take trucks off the road and convert truck to rail track. It's a real challenge because obviously the railroad doesn't have the flexibility that offers the local delivery that can be accomplished on the highway. In reality, where we are here in Houston, we have a significant economic development driver at the Port of Houston. And while we're number one in tonnage, we're only about 2 million TEUs of throughput in containers on year over year, but that still drives a huge amount of congestion. What we really need to look for is a solution to get a more robust ship-to-rail transfer facility so that those containers can move efficiently, not only regionally but inland as well, as we look at the future. Because I live and drive on Highway 290, I work in Webster when I'm in town and I'm traveling. That's 52 miles. I contributed to the whole authority. And Highway 290 is very near to my heart. And as soon as we get a solution to solve some of the congestion on 290, I'm going to be all over that. But we really need to get these things to work so that we can develop and manage the industrial development we use, supporting it so that the goods movement from the port to those industrial centers is more efficient and more effective in accomplishing. Let me give you an example of what I've seen in a market that really works. If you go to an Acura dealer in Dallas, on the back side of their building, there's constructed a garage, basically a one-car garage in the back of the building. On the inside of the garage door, where there's a garage door that opens to the facility. On the outside of the garage, there's a door that opens to the outside, i.e. the common area or the dealership lot. During the day, the Acura dealers place orders all day long, and those orders don't come during the daytime. But at night, the driver brings the goods for that day's supply of parts to the outside door. He opens it, puts the stuff inside, and leaves, and goes to the next Acura dealer and delivers the same stuff, or the orders for that door. When the mechanics come to work in the morning, the next morning, they open the inside door, which is secure, and they have access to the parts. So what they've done is they've provided a solution that allows the deliveries to be accomplished off-peak hours, i.e. what's been done effectively in LA, and if you recall there, the pier gas, during the congestion time, they basically said, if you want to take the container off the terminal during the day, you can pay a fee for it. We prefer you take it off at night so you don't intermix with the congestion of the highways for the commuters. But this model provides an example of how you can coordinate the needs of a company, the distribution of parts and services effectively, reduce congestion, reduce emissions, increase safety, and still get products and services delivered on a timely basis. And it's solutions like that that make us excited about the work we do, because it really is an effective solution for solving the problems that we face. And we'd love to see that grow across a lot of the businesses where we can have a much more effective solution. Let me just sort of tie this up. The Houston market in the region is a destination for parts for consumer goods that come here, not only from Houston, but from literally every corner, every port on the East Coast and the West Coast. And that creates problems because we have freight coming to us from Dallas on the train that needs to get off the train and delivered. We have freight that comes to us by truck from Dallas because that's where the large intermodal terminals are. We have freight that's trucked all the way from LA here, as much as that's crazy. We have that. Moving freight from people go through when they want to put a distribution center somewhere. You have to look at not only the inbound, that's the freight that arrives from the port to that distribution center. That strategy has to work, but now you also have to fulfill the outbound solution from the building to the stores or to the consumers, or to the fulfillment centers, how that works. And both those pieces have to work effectively. Well, the reality is that those warehouse and distribution centers want to be as close as possible to the consumers. And that's out Highway 290, because that's where the growth in Houston is, excepting possibly the sugar network. And we've got to figure out a way to make this work more effectively. And I hope that we can find a way to contribute to the study. If y'all haven't read parts of the study, Paula, we have it on the website. It's an incredibly valuable study, huge amounts of valuable information. I would encourage you to spend a few hours and look at some of the detail because Paul and Steve really put together a great piece of work.
Good. Thank you. So we'll, let me say one thing that I think you heard from this group, and I want to pick up something that Steve said. He was describing this, the Acura dealer, and there's a door there, and on one side is where the sales lot is, and the other side is where the goods are coming in. We're used to working on the sales side of it. We walk in the dealership, cars are there. When we need them, they're there to be had. And unless you order something, generally you show up and the goods are around. Same thing when you go into a shop, the goods are there. They weren't there yesterday. Something happened. Somebody had to do something. And there's somebody doing something every single day on the roads and the rails and the ports and the airports. That's how it all happens. It's a continual thing. It's a daily effort to sustain, to keep us supplied. Now, you heard quite a cross-ranging perspectives here. You heard people who are tending to and concerned for the roadway network, the railroad network, and who are making decisions and are charged with making decisions of public interest. You heard people that are trying to operate not only on a local basis, on a regional basis, on a global basis, in terms of trying to make great big supply chains work well for the consumer industry and for the petrochemical industry, which is one of the mainstays of the regional economy. So we have quite a nice mixture of things of perspectives here. Now, we're going to have 4 questions. The first of these will deal with facilities. We'll talk about bottlenecks. We'll talk about performance, and we're going to talk about mitigations. The first question is, what are the most significant freight facilities and roadways to your business or to your jurisdiction, and why? Now, facilities here could be anything from it could be a terminal, it could be a port, it could be an airport, and the roadways could be of any type, anything from something very major to something just local, but was really important in terms of making things come together. Now, Mary, I'm going to start with you, but we won't continue to go in this direction. But this time we will.
Okay. Well, what I'd like to say is that Harris County has an incredible transportation system. And I think that it's because of the transportation system that's led to, can you hear me in the back? Can you hear me okay? Okay, I'm trying to speak up. But it's because of that incredible transportation system that's led to our economic growth. And I tell you, for Cy-Fair, we have really experienced growth, especially since the last census. But then, if you flip that, it's because of that has kind of led to the situation now with the roads with all the freight congestion. So, first we wanted the economic growth, but now they're all coming, and it's because of that we could become stagnant if we don't address this problem. I can tell you that I get calls from an economic developer standpoint, and I'm talking with a manufacturing group out of India, and they're scheduling a site visit 3 weeks away, and 3 weeks later we talk and they go, man, we love Cy-Fair. We've got great land, there's great opportunity there, except there's such a congestion problem on 290. So, we're losing opportunities because of the congestion, and now we just need to deal with it. I mean, we're addressing it, and we know it's there. So from that standpoint, we've got to do something so we can become economically competitive with other areas. And from the rail district standpoint, we've got 1 dozen major railroads that's in Harris County that were built in the 1900s. And there's many of those railroads that are are in operations now, but there's also some that have been abandoned and they can be put to good use. So that's a point that we need to consider. That's an alternative solution to some of this traffic. In addition, there's several freeways and highways that's right now under consideration for redesignation. And I don't know if everybody is up to speed on redesignation, but when I'm talking to site selectors, they want to be near, and I think, Steve, you said it, they want to be near specifically interstates. That's what they look for moving products. So that's a huge thing for us. And the redesignation process, currently it's Interstate 10, Highway 45, US 59 and US 290 are under the redesignation process. So we'll kind of keep you posted on that. In addition, with the infrastructure of Harris County, we all know that it's just a huge freight hub, and it's going to continue to get more congested. And quite honestly, South Fair's concern, not about the Port of Houston, but what's going to happen with the widening of the Panama Canal in 2014. That's going to mean, from the information and data we've seen, that means more ships, more containers coming to the Port of Houston, which is a good thing. But what's going to happen to the roadways? It's going to continue to just be more congested. We've got to really start addressing it now. So from my perspective, it's just kind of getting a handle on it moving forward.
Pass the time. With regards to that first question, the most important facilities, from the toll road's perspective, it's going to be that ring road that the county has, the San Houston Tollway, as it essentially touches all three major airports that we have in the community and goes to the port. And also happens to butt up against many neighborhoods that people live in, right outside the door, not very far away. In terms of bottlenecks, it is that ring road happens to intersect all of these major highways. Those are also where our bottlenecks are. The tollway traffic is primarily a community traffic. We don't have a ton of freight traffic on our roadways, though we know it's growing and it's going to continue to grow. But our biggest bottlenecks are going to be the intersections of all these major roads and highways going out.
I want to take a slightly different tack here and speak about, like I said earlier, about the bulk transportation. What I mean by bulk is very liquid and dry products that move not in small containers, but in large containers, real cars, ships, and the like. And actually, Houston has a couple of very significant facilities there. One is the oil tanking crude oil terminal over in Galena Park, which is probably one of the largest crude oil terminals in the world. And also the Kinder Morgan Pasadena refined products terminal over in Pasadena, which is, I don't know what the current number is, but I was in that industry more directly. I know that something to the effect of 40% of the nation's gasoline basically originates in that terminal. So the reason I bring these up is because it could be a lot worse than it is if there wasn't this network of pipelines that connect all these terminals. And maybe it's kind of a model that we could maybe build upon. I'm going to use the fuels distribution model that affects each of you when you go to the gas station and pay $4 a gallon. And that is, but essentially that gasoline is flowing underneath the ground. You don't see it. And it's going to a series of terminals that are spread out through the metro area. And so that kind of last mile component is literally a last mile. So that fuel truck that actually delivers to and replenishes the gasoline stations are not taking up that much of the road capacity. In fact, most of you would probably don't even notice them, except maybe when you're at the gas station. And so that's the effect of having kind of a very efficient mode of transportation, bulk transportation. And there's a lot of products that can fit into that realm there. And to some extent, to expound on this, I mean, the development of intermodal trains was kind of trying to literally piggyback, as it were, on that concept. So you're consolidating a lot of small parcels into a one train. I think you guys have seen the commercials on TV, that one train, 1 gallon fuel train, 470 trucks or something like that. But it's the same concept, it's consolidating your product so that you have a more efficient means of transportation.
Angela plotted a couple of places that I thought were fairly important. The first one is the Walmart Distribution Center, a 2 million square foot warehouse space that they put down by the port area. The reason that was important, in my opinion, for Houston as a region was that it was the catalyst that put Houston as a destination for warehouse distribution on the map. We had always been a bulk port, a bulk terminal, a significant port for industrial activity, but the Walmart footprint there years ago when they first opened that facility became the first impression of Houston as an opportunity to develop into a real destination for intermodal goods as well as for container destination, as well as for containers as a throughput to other inland centers. And that leads me to my next two, which is the Bayport and the Barbers Cup terminals. Both of those facilities are significant because they will be, again, a catalyst for driving the port's strategy, which is to create an all-off rotation to your question about what's the impact of the 2014 expansion of the Panama Canal. Clearly, opportunities are being plotted now on the East Coast and the West Coast to take advantage of the scale of using the larger ships that can be through the canal, but also to realize that ports with the capacity to handle those ships will be the winners in the future, and Houston to some extent will be in that rotation. The other significant development recently has been where you guys are going to be the war down in Pendleton at the KCS in the intermodal terminal. Kansas City Southern, for those of you who are aware, or maybe not be, purchased a Mexican railroad several years ago, actually a while ago. And now KCS New Mexico is working to convert what has traditionally been truck traffic in Mexico to rail traffic. And when they're successful, if they're successful in that strategy, that's going to make Rosenberg a very, very important part of their strategy for long haul converting trucks to rail, both for rail car services as well as for intermodal. And so while that's still a small diamond under pressure, years from now that's going to become a very, very significant part of Houston's strategy to become part of this intermodal international capability. And then there's two other rail-specific developments. There's one called Port Crossing. It's just outside Bayport in Barbers Cup. And it was designed specifically as a rail campus to solve a problem with the railroad staff, specifically that they really would prefer to have their users aggregated into sort of one location or one campus. This is for the rail car user, because the railroads don't like to push cars across streets and street crossings, multiple street crossings to get to one building to serve them with 10 cars. They would much prefer to service an aggregated location. What this facility provides is a number of buildings all on a common rail line, so that the railroad is efficient when they push their rail cars into that particular facility. The other facility that I think is significant, I think that's Andrew will put this one on the map. But out of Liberty County, there's a thing called the Storage and Transit Yard. For those of you who are interested in train trivia, it's the largest storage and transit yard in the United States, in Liberty County. There's over 9,000 rail cars of resin that are produced in Houston at the petrochemical facility that are moved out there and then stored, and then those facilities, or that facility provides an aggregated center where you can efficiently build trains or destinations literally all over the country in an efficient manner outside of the congestion area of Houston, away from the traffic centers downtown, and you can do that efficiently out of Liberty County. So those are sort of my top 5 centers where there's real significant value as it relates to Houston's traffic infrastructure.
Thank you. One thing that you've heard there is you've heard some facilities that are around the corner and others that are on the other side of the district. The point of that being, it's all a network, and all pieces are interdependent. One part holds up another. And if you didn't have something like a support facility in one spot, you'd get it backed up everywhere. So you put things in different places and they all come together and we all benefit from this. Now looking at those facilities, next question. What are the existing bottlenecks or hotspots that you see in the network? And what do you think their associated impacts are? And I want to phrase this or qualify this a little bit. The bottlenecks and hotspots can be facility related, physical things. They can also be institutional. So institutional might be interaction between the public and private sector, or it might be between public agencies, or it might be between private parties, like the different parties that have to come together between the port and the delivery of goods off the port. So it's a fairly wide-ranging question. Handle it as you like. And Peter, may I ask you to start on this?
Sure, happy to. I mean, touched on it again from our agency's perspective. There's bottlenecks and we're all any large intersection between highways. That's what we experience every day in this type of system. But taking the question in a more broad sense about bottlenecks in the macro sense, and I know we're going to get into this in a minute, but some of it is just lack of funding. I mean, there are a lot of us here, we go to these meetings, it's the same old deal. There's not enough money for everything we need. But I think maybe in a greater sense, there doesn't seem yet to be an acceptance of a funding mechanism for the transportation needs that we have. I think that's the biggest bottleneck. You hear a lot of reasons why not, but don't hear an outcry yet. That's what we want. That's how we have to find transportation. I think there's a bottleneck. That's one of the biggest. It's a pretty good one. You want to take it?
Well, I think to some extent also there's a cultural bottleneck, as it were, with this understanding that all elements, the public and private sectors and people have to share this network, and there's not enough. I mean, it's obvious for those of us who are out there that there's not enough roadway capacity to do that right now. So it's going to take some creative thinking and creative policy setting to come up with ideas, plans, regulations, what have you, to kind of divvy out this capacity and make it more efficient.
Jerry, you've lived here a long time, and you've seen different things happen. Is there anything other than building that you've seen done that you thought helped?
Well, something, well, I think to some extent, and this is somewhat related to building, but in the early days of what's called the metro system here, there was the implementation of this park and ride system, which I still think today is one of the best ones in the nation. And it was basically, on a relative basis, a low capital thing. There were some dedicated kayak vehicle lanes implemented, but in the grand scheme of things, it wasn't a commuter rail project. It's the same. It was the result of some creative thinking and some low capital approaches that have benefited a lot.
Can I ask you one other twist on this too? Would you say that the volume of business in the petrochemical industry today is much larger than 30 years ago, isn't it?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. In absolute terms. And there's another wrinkle here that we should consider. And that is 5 years ago, if you talk to some of the major petrochemical producers, they would be telling you there will never be another petrochemical plant built in the United States. We're all going to the Middle East, we're going to Qatar, Dubai, all these places. Everything's going there, cheap gas. That's it. It's all, And but I've seen in the last 3 months that there's been about 4 new ethylene plants announced for the Gulf Coast region. And why? Because natural gas is at like historic zero levels. So never say never. I think is the key here. And if anything, I think we're going to see a burgeoning of that production here in the area.
Steve?
I'm going to answer real simply and real easy. The first answer is 290. I think we have to find some solutions that allow Clearly, those people are very, very brutal when it comes to checking off that little check marks on the clipboard. It doesn't take very long for them sitting in traffic to say, this is what we're working for. We're at it. And those decisions a lot of times get made before she even knows that the such selection people have been here. Or looked at the possibility of locating, on 290 or somewhere in Houston. And so opportunities sometimes don't even get observed as opportunities because they come along before folks like Mary get a chance to feel them and handle them. But to the conversation about institution, if you look at, and this I don't want to bore you guys with time on but this is really an interesting discussion. If you look at the ports on the East Coast, the Port of Houston, the Port of Mobile, the Port of Tampa, the Port of Manatee, all these ports are clamoring for dollars to expand their individual infrastructure, to dredge their water to get deeper, because everybody wants to be in front of the opportunity presented by Panama in 2014 when it expands. They all want to increase their rail to ship connection in order to be able to expedite freight from the terminal inland, by rail to long haul places like Chicago, Dallas, Columbus, places that have traditionally been inland ports or load centers. And there's not enough money to fund all those. You started in New York, they were 1.9 billion for the dredging, another billion to raise the Bayonne Bridge because it's too low for the bridge for the big ships to go over. And it's just cascading down around along those facilities. And every one of them has hundreds of millions of dollars of requests on the table for infrastructure to support growing their competitiveness in front of the Panama Canal. Houston's in that mix. And somehow or other, we need to find a policy or a transportation policy that says we can't afford to do all these things for every port in the country. We have to pick winners and losers. We have to pick places where we have the best opportunity to take those dollars and do sensible things with them. And I'm sure it's the same conversation they have in Austin on a regular basis with the DOT. We have to do things that have the most impact. And while everybody wants 290 to be fixed, is that really where the money ought to be spent first? And I think policy team is trying to sort through that and come up with an answer that says, yeah, we have a hell of a problem on 290, but maybe we have some other problems. She's our French ball. But we have some other problems somewhere else that need to be addressed before we address 290. And folks like me who live out here have to get along with it. And that's really where these sort of conversations really become important.
Mary?
Well, let me just say that we all want to prosper and grow. But I'm dealing with issues such as US 290 is the 12th most congested, freeway road segment in Texas. That's according to TxDOT. That's not a good market to have. That's not something I include in my outgoing information. And we all know that it's an issue, but we do want to come up with some solutions. And I feel like right now, as an example of working together, Harris County Toll Authority is trying to add capacity along Houston Tollway that could help eliminate or reduce some of that congestion. So that's one mode. What I will say is that looking over to the chamber perspective, talking about the rail district, I've sat in Rotary clubs and PTA meetings and community meetings talking about rail. And honestly, I cannot see being from Texas giving my car to drive on passenger rail. But the longer I look at studies and talk to people, especially people in Austin all along 290 coming in who do business or they have medical issues, they're constantly going back and forth in the medical industry. And some of these people are elderly. They in Europe would be on the passenger rail coming to Houston if that was an option. We're doing surveys now. The Chamber has launched a pretty aggressive program, and if you had these four options, expansion, commuter rail, tollway, how would you rank the way things should be done? And I think the study's been very, very enlightening. I didn't think people would want to get their cars in Texas, but it's just, people are sick of traffic, and they want to do whatever it's going to take to get the problem solved. I agree with you, although I hate to admit 290 is not the most important issue in Texas. It's about the economy in the area and all of the grow. So I think the partnership we have with the Harris County Toll Authority and trying to put solutions, that's a step in the right direction. Bottlenecks, I immediately think of 610 and the Beltway. That's areas that we really need to kind of figure out what we can do to really reduce some of that traffic. There's also the freight network. There's problems where single track lines cross and force trains to have to stop for crossings. Belt Junction. You guys probably know more about this. This is, again, I'm having to look at my notes, but that's just north of 68 of the Hardin Toll Road. And the other major area of concern is Bridge 16 and Bridge 5A, where the double track lines approach a single track bridge over Buffalo Line. So, you know, those are areas of concern, and we all want to figure out what's going to be the solution. So,
Yes. Peter, one time there was some discussion about a toll parallel to the 290. Hempstead. Yeah, Hempstead, is that?
It's been discussed for the better part of a decade. Some plans have been involved sometime around 2000, maybe earlier, showing, hey, look at Houston Highway, that underutilized assets in their parallel to 290 would be great. We made that into a multimodal corridor. Maybe we can enhance some rail services along there. We put in a tollway, and then still got the North Houston Highway there. We've been studying it. There's been discussion, no, Harris County's not going to do it at all. There's discussion 4 years ago, Harris County's coming in, putting in that tollway tomorrow. We still look at it. The toll road authority is an interesting animal in it. We don't take tax money. And so what we have to do in terms of putting out projects, they've got to pay for themselves. Here's an interesting wrinkle. The minute you try to build highways, you get closer and closer and closer into the urban core, it becomes much more expensive to actually put that highway in the ground. And so we are still looking for a way to provide some capacity in this corridor that someday may pay for itself. Doesn't have to pay for itself anymore. Doesn't have to pay for itself in 2 years, but there has to be something that says, hey, look, if you invest public money in this asset, at some point in time, there's going to be real payback. So that discussion continues.
What about the 290 Pacific Line potential here? Where does that seem at this point?
Well, I can tell you that lots of associates provided a study for the relevant survey. I think this is September 2010. I have a study with you, and you can go online to look at what their recommendations are. But from Hempstead all the way into 610, they identified 10 possible stations. They kind of discovered that 23 miles per hour is probably the least speed to transport the passengers. But that study's been completed, and then that's online. If you want to take a look at it in depth. Where we are now is that we're moving into a study with BP. They're going to look at the model and come back and kind of give us their thoughts and any comments, whether or not this is suitable for the lines that are existing now, and that's where we are. So we've got lots of solutions for study. I mean, it's something that could definitely be done, but with BP, we just have to important recommendations on what they kind of UP, I'm sorry, yeah.
Let me pile on here a little bit and compliment your agency. I mean, this is a good example of a public and private partnership that you all may or may not be aware of. The rail lines in this country are all privately owned, and there is little regulation. I guess it's a nice way to say about their operation. So there's not a lot of forced public input on their operation. But in this particular case, in the Gulf Coast Rail District, there's been a pretty good degree of cooperation in terms of the railroads that come into Houston, looking at different ways that they can move their trains and free up some of this track that might be used for commuter residents.
And I apologize, I didn't follow the story about BP in Kansas City all day and the lack of power, so I'm having to deal with that.
Now, we've heard a few things that I want to use to set up the next question. We heard Mary worried about 290 as something that was not exactly a crown jewel. What she's trying to do there is she's trying to attract business into the region.
Yes.
You heard Jerry and Steve talking about things that were needed in order to make the supply chains of the region work better. You heard Peter being concerned about the performance on the network for the sake of the citizens, just so that you can get around that. Everybody's got a concern with performance. Are we, in what you want in performance, is you want things to be getting better, not falling back. And progression in doing things better, that sounds like Houston to me. And that's what you want, that's what you want. But we got obstacles. And you've heard some of the camel stuck his nose in the tent with the question of where the money's going to come from. That's one of the big ones. Or there's an allusion to something that's been talked about for a decade. The amount of time it takes us to decide on things is another thing that stands in our way. So the question here is, what other impediments or what impediments do you want to enlarge on that stand between us in getting better freight performance in the region? Jerry, do you want to start on that one?
Sure. I'm going to Jerry a little bit here. Correct me here if it's errors. But, I think one thing that's is impeding the flow of container freight, especially out of the big container terminals, Bayport and Lodestar, is that in this kind of not just the local movements, but these are the things that are going on to trains or coming off of trains to go to other parts of the country, is the rail lines do not go into either of these container terminals. And there's something they call a dray that has to take place that takes them from the container yard. And in the case of the BNSF, it's over by Hobby Airport. So a truck has to take a container from over there, in fact, all the way over to Bayport and all the way over to Chicago. Okay? In my point of view, that's a real big impediment because there's a cost that it introduces that might not be there, otherwise be there. And it adds an incredible amount of traffic onto like the 225 corridor and the I-45 corridor. And there are solutions here. There have been solutions in other parts of the country, most notably in Southern California, the project they call the Alameda Corridor, where they ran the trains all the way into the port, and basically a big crane picks the containers right off the trains and so on ship. So I think we need some creative thinking better. If Houston wants to become more robust here.
And to that point, I'll just pick up on that. To that point, the reality is that if you look at Houston as it relates to its influence as a port on goods moving in the region, you can draw a circle probably 300 to 350 miles around the region and say that's pretty much the influence of the port as it relates to intermodal. Now, there are a few exceptions. There is some low load that goes to Chicago. There is weekly train service from both UP and BN. BNSF to get goods to Chicago. That's not a high demand element. The goods that come into the Port of Houston largely are consumed in the state of Texas. And one of the challenges, and we think one of the benefits of the port strategy for the all rotation would be to expand that sphere of influence to become more of a feeder port to places like Dallas and Columbus and Chicago, and emerging places in Central Florida where there are inland ports that really function as hubs and spokes for transferring their own goods to the people who live in those marketplaces, or the people who live around the marketplaces. So we're very much in favor of seeing that transition of ship to rail, but the reality is that in order to get there, we have to expand the zone of influence of what we're used to, which means we need to drive more business in the Port of Houston. And the folks that are working hard to get that done, these are very, very competitive times in the container business. And if you look across the waterfront, you see growth of 2 or 3 or 4 or 5% in TEUs, but that's over last year or over the year before, which was down 20% across the waterfront. So every port on the coast, any of the coasts right now, is really working hard to gain their market share back to where they were, 6 and 7, where we did about 65 million TEUs across the entire waterfront of the U.S. Last year, we probably did 40 to 44. So So the scale just isn't there to drive those dollars toward a more robust rail-ship relationship. There are some ports that have that, and not done, but those are very unique. On the one hand, Alameda is a good example of that. Norfolk has a good example of that. And Norfolk, to some extent, in some of the terminals, other ports along the way are trying to find the money to do just that, to affect that transit. So that's an ongoing challenge for us. It will be a challenge for us all the way through 2014, and after that, to get both terminals affected in that sense.
Well, you know, it sounds like a broken record. It's going to be, again, acceptance of the funding mechanisms to keep pace with the transportation.
Let me just interact with you. You're not, this is the one way or another, we're going to pay. If we don't invest money, things deteriorate. So we either pay for it with worse performance, or we decide we're going to put money in. Is that true?
You have to. And, you know, there's all kinds of mechanisms to play with tolls.
Yeah.
We just run them up with toll roads. Well, there's always a backlash. There probably always will be a backlash. Tolls are the way it is. Because people say, well, you can't raise the taxes. You just can't do that. Well, gas tax will have been touched in basically 20 years. So if you're going to raise the gas tax, it's probably going to be significant. If that's going to be your funding mechanism, you don't really see support for that right now. So then you have a lot of transportation theorists who say, oh, no problem, we're going to put a black box on every car. And that's what it is. I got more polite technologically appropriate term to this. This is essentially a black box in everybody's car, and you're going to pay per mile. Some people like it, but a lot of people say, oh, no, there's no way the government's going to try to keep on the line. And then the outcry about selling what are essentially public assets to private parties and letting the private party benefit financially from that. But at the same time, that private party would be putting towards a public good, which is transportation. And there's a large outcry for that too. And still, people are searching for that acceptance of what is the mechanism? What is it going to be to fund all of these needs? Still waiting. And meanwhile, we'll do our job and everyone else does their job. We can move the cars we have to move. It's not fun sitting in traffic. The toll road system works pretty well. It's going to continue to work well. But if we have future needs like 290, and if you've got to start investing in things for the public good, that may not return on your investment for years or even decades, then there better be an acceptance of how to fund that.
Well, we agree definitely on one thing. It's about funding. I think all the panelists will agree that it is about funding. And one thing that I want to say now, not as a chamber president, not as a Gulf Coast Rail District board member, but as a mother, you know, I'm worried about the integrity of our road system. I mean, we don't have enough money right now to maintain the road system in its condition today. Where are we going to be in 20 years when I'm crossing over the San Jacinto Bridge wondering, are those bolts going to hold us up to get across? I mean, I'm concerned about that as a mother, as a hopefully grandmother one of these days. I mean, those are things that, it's just the integrity of the overall transportation system. But it all falls back down to funding. We've got to maintain our roads, and we've also got to be able to expand in the future and other modes of transportation. I mean, it's all about funding. And one thing I will say is that we have really reached out to our legislators and asked for assistance. We voted you into office. Please help us fix this problem. And I will say that, you know, Harris County Judge Emmett, he's at everything we do. He listens. He's trying to help us come up with solutions. The rail, I think he is a big supporter of. Senator Patrick, hi Sarah. These are people that have been in our office and they're talking to us. I mean, we've got the dialogue going, but you can't get water out of a turnip. So I think as a community, as citizens, as residents, we all live in this river, we're all experiencing the same thing. We're going to have to finally belly up to the bar, if you would, and decide we're going to invest. And it's going to cost us a little more, whether it's registration, fees or gas tax or a special road reward. You've got to decide if that's what we're going to do. You don't want your taxes raised, but we're at a point of no return. We've got to make some critical decisions.
There was somebody last night who was reminding us of the I-35 bridge up in Minneapolis that collapsed a couple years ago. That's the same I-35 that starts in Laredo and winds its way a long way north. A lot of bridges. Our roads, by and large, they're 50 plus years old, like me, you know? I'm not young anymore, neither are they. There's a question, there's a fourth question we should try to get to, but I want, there's a question from the audience, and in the interest of time, I'm going to skip that last one. I hope we can pick it up, and I'm going to start with a few from you folks. There's a pair which are related, so let me read both of them and ask you kind of to react to the general thought here. One of them, this one's particularly addressed for Steve, but all of you can, maybe Steve can start, but the rest of you can weigh in, which was, what are the benefits to the region of expanding the zone of influence of our ports? Doesn't it, according to the questioner, doesn't this just mean more through traffic with little economic benefit? And then the related question was around the expansion of the zone of influence. Would that be to expand the sharing of costs for improvements? So they're related questions. Steve, do you want to start with that? Anybody else can?
Yeah, one of the values of expanding that zone of influence so that Houston becomes a gateway for inland freight is that the freight that arrives here. Let's take an example of what happens in LA. Port of Los Angeles processes between Long Beach and LA processes about 15 million TEUs of containers a year. About 65% of that freight actually stops in LA or is transloaded or is managed by someone adding a value to that, and then it's reloaded and moves inland. So when you look at the warehousing and distribution centers that exist in the Inland Empire, a large number of those are value-added centers where activities are occurring for the freight that is unloaded in containers, reloaded in containers, configured for warehousing or distribution centers elsewhere in the country, loaded on railroad and goes in. So when I describe Houston becoming more influential as a zone of influence, I'm saying that from a private, consulting standpoint, because I want to see more warehousing and distribution centers here that are value-added centers. Today, warehousing and distribution centers are largely destinations for freight that's going to be driven out on that last mile to the consumers in the stores in Houston. And I'd like to see us add to that equation by adding a value-added component so that we become that LA, if you will, and we become more involved in the entire supply chain and not just be a destination for the freight. And that's the intention behind that notion of expanding the zone of influence.
Well, I add to that, it's just that there is some value to the local economy by being a origination point of a long haul transportation route. You know, if it's by rail, it's more rail crews, more dispatch people, more locomotive maintenance and stuff like that. So being at the start, it has some local economic
Let me ask just another angle on that one, Jerry, which is that from observing the petrochemical industry through the years, now there's a lot of the crude that comes in here clearly gets processed here. You know, there are huge factories that do that stuff. But there's also a fair amount of it's processed, but then it gets funneled out. The pipelines of Houston feed the entire nation. Apart from the refineries, are there other things that come with it in the way of local jobs?
Oh, there's secondary, tertiary processing that goes on.
Yeah, go on.
You know, I think the chemical industry is a little better example of that because there's different steps. In fact, the example you use is plastic resin that's stored out in Liberty County in the Dayton area. Well, that's polymer resin is like about a 4-stage process to make that out of natural gas and crude oil. And each of those stages create value, along the way. It's more equipment, it's more people, it's more maintenance. it's just a lot of stuff. And the interesting thing is it's not something that's real visible publicly. I don't know. So, I mean, if you drive along 225, it's very visible. And for the rest of the region, it isn't. But I mean, a lot of that stuff is going into warehouses in the area while it's getting trucked around. So yes, I mean, just, to the extent that Houston can keep that influence and that nexus of crude oil and chemical hydrocarbon processing, it's going to be huge. Oh, and something that's coming down the pipe that could be huge. And that is, some of you may have seen in the media some reports on this drilling activity that's going on out in West Texas. They call it the shale gas sometimes. There's a big play out there called the Eagle Ford Field. And this is like a tertiary recovery of hydrocarbons. But this is a big deal. And there's another one out in the Dakotas called the Bakken Fields. This is a huge deal, and that stuff's all essentially coming here. And that's because essentially it's kind of a West Texas intermediate substitute. It's a very sweet crude, very easy to process, lots of that. So behind the scenes, there's people building facilities to handle that in the area, and it's going to propagate more goods movement, but also a lot more economic.
Thank you. Next question. And Mary, I think this has your name on it. What is the status of Grand Parkway between I-10 West and I-45 North, and how will this affect congestion on 290?
Well, I can tell you that we hope to know more on Thursday. We hope that
Speak up.
No, I'm sorry. I was just talking to you.
Yeah, right.
There could be a vote on funding on Thursday with the commissioners, the Texas Transportation Commissioners. I think there's about $400 million that's on the table, so we've got a lot of areas all pulling and scratching for funds, but it looks like those funds will be allocated toward the Grand Parkway. I know we've got people in the room that are experts on this who know more, but it looks like it's very favorable that could be possibly voted on Thursday. Now, what that will mean is the Grand Parkway segment E, which pertains to Interstate 10 to 290, that segment could start as early summer. We can see digging and we can see some movement on dirt, which would be great for us. Now, for segment F1 and F2, which would be from 290 on to 45, and I think that's a big part of the ExxonMobil deal, and whether or not they're going to have their headquarters here. But I think that we want all that to happen, and the Grand Parkway is a really essential part of the Beltway and 610. That's going to help eliminate a lot of traffic. For 290, anyway, it gives, for example, Cisco is a company that opened their doors just 2 weeks ago, and over the next 24 months, they'll have 1,800 people moving into the area. Now, their corporate office is in the West Houston Energy Corridor, so those people are going to be traveling back and forth from 290 over to I-10. And I'm getting calls from their office going, what are you doing about the Grand Parkway? And we're moving as quickly as we can. I mean, where I get frustrated, and I know there's engineers in the room, but I feel like transportation, we all move at glacial speed on getting things done. It's such big projects, and we're talking billions of dollars. It doesn't happen overnight, and I'm finding that these big projects will get done when we find the funding, and hopefully Thursday we'll know more about funding for the Grand Parkway. So that could be really good news, and it will definitely help reduce traffic on 290. It's going to throw them all off to I-10, but it'll take it a little bit off, but it'll give us a little bit of a reprieve. So yeah, we're excited about that.
Peter, do you have any views on this thing? Or very spot on in terms of discussing the current status. Grand Parkway has been sitting on maps for over 40 years. In the late 60s, it was on the city of Houston. It's finally getting to a point where you're about to see the first real toll section, go under construction. That's the section between 290 and I-10. No doubt, and that's a big road that is some of the pressure on 290. The amount of growth on the region's north side primarily in the Woodlands, Point South, Magnolia, Tomball, and others. It is amazing that the growth has occurred without having essentially a lateral highway to distribute people. And when the F segments come online, it's going to be really helpful to this region. And then further on, you'll see the segments in the Parkway developed by the state. It touches up to seven counties. It's under the state's control. Stay out of it. The next question is it's kind of for all of you. Should an Alameda corridor type project, and some of you, Gary, you have brought this up, but I don't know if we're reacting to it. Should an Alameda corridor type project in Houston be driven by the private sector because of privately owned railroads, or by the public sector as a project of regional significance? Or by both?
I'll weigh in on that. The first component that has to be in place is enough volume and scale. Typically, TPU are not in that space yet in terms of creating enough volume to drive a train 4 or 5 times a day from the port to some inland destination where they can transfer effectively to the common carriers, KCS, UP, or BNSF that operate in and out of Houston. So we've got to get a whole lot more density at the port in order to justify that conversation. I don't think we've been there for quite a while. The Alameda corridor was very much a public-private activity. The railroads even all got together to work together to make that a reality. The recipients of the benefit of that, which is a much more effective process of getting freight off the port terminals into their networks and then on inland into their destination capabilities. So it's going to have to be a conversation where the port is a participant in that conversation, both railroads are in that conversation, and then the process through which that property will be coming here with the support section, an activity would require an awful lot of stakeholders from the state down to local.
One thing I'll add to that is it's kind of already, there's already kind of a basis for doing it in that the Port of Houston has a regulatory right to basically build a rail line into the Port of Houston terminal. And there are currently negotiations going on with the other rail carriers to kind of figure out how that's going to work. So at some point, I don't know how you guys would categorize the Port of Houston, but I guess they're quasi-public in effect. They're going to have a lot of influence over it. And in terms of their constituencies, I mean, that's...
Building a rail line into the port so that you can transfer goods, there's a whole lot of different animals than an Alameda type corridor where you take both Bayport and garbage cut and put that and funnel them together into a single facility somewhere outside Houston where you can transfer in the networks. That's a different animal than just putting a rail line in Bayport. That's it's a completely different context in terms of, we need to get that done, we need to get that done as quickly as possible. That's a separate conversation with the Alameda type strategy. I think is a much longer way to do that.
We're going to need to wrap up. I'm going to ask one final question because it'll be a nice flow to tie things up with, which you'll know. We haven't gotten to quite all the questions that came in, and we'll find a way to get all of them answered with the posting. But the question we'll wrap up with is, do you think the majority of voters understand transportation issues?
Let me start. No. No. It is an educational process. I mean, for example, I spent 2 days recently at the Cyclist Home and Garden Show specifically talking about 290. Well, everybody wanted to talk about the Grand Parkway. And they were voting for the Grand Parkway. The problem is they didn't realize it was going to be tolls. So, they want the extra solution, but they didn't care. But it was the fact that they didn't know. It's very frustrating. So I think that, My 290 is a great website. There could not be more information, but people don't vote to it enough to really utilize it. I just think we need to do a better job educating people. And from the Chamber's perspective, we are really trying to do that with little funding, with the visuals that we have, but it's just educating the public because they want a solution. People want to think there's a glimmer of hope. And if they're at the point to where it means raising fuel tax or whatever we have to do, they want to consider it. They just want to know what are our options. We just need to educate them. And things like this is a great forum to get the word out. So.
You know, I think when we're informed with that question, kind of hedge a little bit. I think most people do understand transportation issues in urban areas and the fact that there's congestion, which means there's more people desiring space that doesn't exist. And so, you know, you can enlarge, which costs money, or you can help people stay longer, stay at work longer. But you've got that interplay. People recognize that. But we do see two other things. One is that a lingering doubt as to whether government really does or doesn't have enough money to put forward these public assets and public goods that people want. And then also, there probably ought to be a greater understanding of how expensive it is to build public or private assets. I'll leave you with just one thought. We discussed 290 a little bit, but for 30 years, it's been envisioned that one day the county, railroads, the city, the state, the federal government, the EPA would bring the Hardy Toll Road into downtown Houston. It's a 3.7 mile project, very short in terms of highways. It's got up to $400 million. And so when you start talking about enlarging, expanding, building public assets in heavily urbanized areas, the cost of that can be extreme.
James, do you want to say anything?
Well, I think that I think the public understands some of these elements of people transportation because everyone does it every day. I think the percent of the public that understands freight transportation is very low. And I don't think they necessarily understand the impact that it has on their own personal transportation and basically on the economic situation in which the area is.
I think voters generally get the concept of congestion, but they don't get the complexity of what goes into causing the congestion. When you look at a supply chain, just take a typical supply chain from supporting a consumer good on a store, there can be as many as 15 or 16 different custody transfers between the origin of the factory in Vietnam or China or India or wherever you want until it actually arrives on the shelf or gets delivered by FedEx for that last mile. And these are extraordinarily complex activities and very expensive activities. And so I think while we understand congestion and we all write about it and we all want it fixed and we want it fixed tomorrow, the reality is that the elements that go into it are much more complex. It's a much longer path. And I think we as in this community, we need to do a better job of explaining to people that the congestion is a problem for us, but it's going to take all of us doing more than writing about the congestion before we get it fixed.
Thank you. You've been a great panel.